All right, so what we are going to be doing is we're going to be taking this web page that has like text and title and images, responsive images at that, and we are going to move it all into a new page on a fresh Sawhorse template site. So what we will be doing is basically copying all of this content, cutting it up into several different pieces, and then putting it into the right folders and calling it in the right way in Sawhorse. So in order to use Sawhorse, the very first thing that we need to do is we need to install it. So there are two ways to do this. One, we could just download all of these files by downloading the zip here and then editing from there. It's not quite as convenient though as actually working from the command line command. So if we scroll down, there's a command line interface. You can click that to read a little bit more. But what we're going to do is we are going to install this command on our machine by using npm install -g sawhorse CLI. So I'll let that work for a little bit. CLI means command line interface. So it's just a different repository called Sawhorse CLI but when you install it, it allows you to use the Sawhorse command. You can use it to create projects or import things or create templates, things like that. So when we do npm install, we are doing npm install -g, which means install this package globally, install it everywhere on our computer. The reason why we do that is when we install the CLI, it gives us the Sawhorse command, and we want to be able to run that command anywhere on our computer. So we don't have to make a whole new project in order to run the Sawhorse command. We will just be able to go anywhere and run something like Sawhorse create. So it has successfully installed. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go to my development folder and I'm going to run this right here. So Sawhorse create and then the name of my project. So because this is for a video, I'm going to say video walkthrough. Now, Sawhorse is going to ask me a few questions. First, it's going to say, what's the folder you want to put this into? The default is video walkthrough. That sounds fine to me. It asks me what kind of starter project I would like. So you can try out these different options, but I would recommend going with a basic project with a few templates to build on, because that will kind of show you all the different things that Sawhorse has to offer and all the different ways it can be used. So it's going to download Sawhorse, unzip Sawhorse, put in the template that we said with the starter project. Then it says run the following commands to get started. So I'm going to cd into video walkthrough. I'm going to npm install, and it's going to install 1,000,001 different plugins. And when that is done, I will npm run start to start up my server. So while that is working, I'm going to hop onto here, and I'm going to open this up in VS Code. So when you have a Sawhorse project, the majority of your time is going to be spent in this src folder, which is where your data is, your HTML is, all your JavaScript, things like that. If you want the specifics of how each one of these different folders works and the stuff that goes inside, in the Sawhorse GitHub repository, if you scroll down, it lists all the different folders here. So there are a few that aren't listed, such as the Illustrator folder or the metadata folder, but those are not as important. Most of the time is going to be spent in src. So, all right, it has finished working. You will get these security vulnerability warnings, but they don't matter because we are going to be building everything out into an HTML web page that we then upload. So there's no node stuff on the internet, nothing that will actually be exposed to the dangerous world at large. So you're free to ignore that. The next command we need to run is npm run start. So npm run start. That will compile our website and it will start up a server for us at localhost 1234. So once it's done building, I'll open that up and we can see what we are starting with. All right, so this is our web page here. What we have an image here, we have a title, we have a D3 visualization here, and then we have a responsive ai2html export down at the bottom. So how does this file get made? A way to know how this file gets made is if we pop into VS Code, into our video walkthrough folder. Inside of SRC, there is a file called index.hbs, index.handlebars. Yours might look different than this. This is the most recent version of Sawhorse. So if you want to follow along one-to-one with what I'm doing, just run npm install -g Sawhorse again. It will update Sawhorse, and then you can make a brand new project that will look like this. So the first thing we notice on this page is there's this headline section here, the subhead, publish date, site name, things like that. This title is from the top of index.hbs. Inside of index.hbs, it says this title is from the top of index.hbs. If I change this to be, you can change this title, I save, and I refresh, it will automatically change the title. So this section up at the top is called Frontmatter. Technically, it's a language called a YAML, Y-A-M-L, but more or less, this is a variable, and this is the value that it is. And then later, somewhere on the site, we say, insert the title into the page. So everything from this date down here to my name, I could change this to not Jonathan Soma, give it a save, and it'll update there. So this will become important later when we want to make different pages that have different titles. All we'll need to do is change this up here. So as we scroll down, let's turn on word wrap. Now, let's ignore this for the moment. Let's keep going down and we'll come back to the layout. So this right here is called a partial. This is handlebars. Handlebars is these fancy curly braces here. And what this means is, hey, go find this thing called basic inside of the folder story, and then just plug it into our web page here. So in theory, I could write stuff here as HTML. I could save it, I could refresh, and it'll show up right there. The way that you usually do this template stuff, though, is every chunk of code or every chunk of words or every story or things like that, you're probably going to put into a separate file. So in this case, we have this separate file called story/basic. So where does this come from? So inside of SRC, there's a folder called HTML, and then there is another folder called story. Inside of SRC HTML story, there is basic.hbs. Basic.hbs is all of this right here. So we have some lorem ipsum, we have an image of a cat, and then we have a little bit more lorem ipsum. So what's happening is we are saying, hey, take the contents of this file and then plug it into our page. So if I edit what's on this page, so let's say I delete these two paragraphs and I save it, when I refresh, those two paragraphs disappear from here. You say, why would you ever do this? This will become more important when we start working with ai2html or for D3. So in theory, we could have just put all of this content instead of saying, hey, include this partial. We could have just put it all right here, saved it, and then it would show up. But because we're trying to break things down into pieces just to get used to it, we are going to be using a partial here. So the next one is another partial. So it says go into story and find something called chart. So if we go into SRC HTML story, we see a file called chart.hbs. If you click it, so we have a div, We have a title, we scroll down, it's this section right here. So here's a chart, here's a chart. I have a script tag, and then div ID chart1. Now the reason that there is a graphic here, that there is a D3 visualization, is because I say, okay, we have an empty div right here. I want to put a chart in it, and I wrote some D3 code to do it. We're including this D3 code right here. We're saying, hey, we have a JavaScript file that we would like to include here. It's inside of scripts, and it's called chart01.js. If we want to find this file, it is inside of src, scripts, chart01.js. And so this is going to be where all of our JavaScript files live. They're all going to live inside of scripts, and we're going to include them just this exact same way. So if you had a second chart, we could cut and paste this. We can make this chart2 and then make it scripts chart2.js. We would just have to add that JS file there. We scroll down a little bit further. This is another partial called Story Illustrator Demo. We look for it in the same place we did before. So all the partials are in src HTML, and we just need to know, oh, okay, go into Story Illustrator Demo. So we have Story Illustrator Demo. This file looks very, very complicated. And that's because it is a terrible export from AI to HTML. We'll cover that in a little bit about how to deal with these AI to HTML exports. But basically, you will create this file in Illustrator, and then you will never have to look at it again. Just by using the magic of, hey, include this partial, it will automatically show up on your site. And then down at the bottom, we have the thing that we did before, where you just kind of type text, and then that text magically shows up. And of course, this image here is the Illustrator export that came through there. Now, you might say to me, okay, I get this. So this is our page, and this is including different parts of the page from other files, because for some reason we want to put them in different files. But there's other stuff on this page too, right? Copyright 2012. All of this text here. So in theory, yes, we did update this by changing these things here, but this is all HTML, right? This is probably an H1 tag. This is some other kind of tag. Where does all of this come from? So that's this line right here, where we say, hey, we want to take this page, all of this content right here, all this content from here to here, the story text, the chart, the Illustrator piece, this other text down here, and we want to put it inside of something that's called a layout or a template. And it's basically a fill-in-the-blanks page where you have things on top and things on the bottom, and you just say fill everything in the middle. So this weird thing right here, this exclamation mark, less than, that means this is a template. So we're going to use a template, we're going to use a layout, and it is called default. As this comment says, it's called default.hbs in src HTML layouts. So if we go into src HTML layouts, we see default.hbs. So default.hbs, kind of more complicated, kind of less complicated. We recognize this code here. This code is partials. It's saying go into the base folder and find us meta. Go into the base folder, find us fonts. Go into the base folder, find us analytics, or headline, or footer. And if we look at src HTML base, we will see all of those files there. So this is some Google Analytics code. This is the footer at the bottom of the page. This is where you have the headline, the author name, the published date, all that stuff. So the magic is that in default.hbs, in the middle, there's this body tag. And so what this body does is it basically takes everything from index.hbs, all this stuff right here, and then it shoves it inside of here. So it'll have the headline above it, the footer below it, this JavaScript code right here, these styles. Any page that has, hey, use the default layout on it is going to have all of this stuff along with everything that you put in here. So why would you ever use that? Well, if we end up with a ton of different pages that all kind of look like this, they all have headlines, they all have footers, they all have all of that, you might, if you were doing this without templates, without layouts, you would have to type all of this at the top of every index page. You would have to put all of this at the bottom of every index page. And every time you chose to change it, maybe add another style sheet, add another resizer script, something like that, you would have to edit every single one of your pages individually. But instead, by using a layout file, when we make other files like index.handlebars, we can just say, oh, hey, use the default layout. And then those new pages will look just like our old pages. In fact, let's do that right now. So we currently have index.hbs, and we want to make this new page right here, this beautiful, beautiful sample page. I am going to create a new file inside of src, and I am going to call it sample.hbs. So basically the same as index.hbs, it is sample.hbs. And if at any point you want a little more reference to what I'm talking about, I recommend going to the Sawhorse documentation and then reading all of these sections under the setup, because it will talk you through how each one of these bits and pieces works. So if I'm breezing over something or just glancing across something, it might be useful to read this documentation. Okay, so what we are going to do is we have a new file called sample.hbs. And it's always easiest to just work from something that already exists. So I'm going to copy all of the code from index.hbs and then just put it into sample.hbs. One word of warning, make sure you are doing this inside of the src directory. Don't put it in HTML, don't put it anywhere else. It needs to be inside of src. So I'm going to save it. And the next thing we need to do is we need to link from this index page onto our sample page. If we were better prepared, we might have a navigation bar that links to all of our pages. But for the time being, in order to have this page exist, we need to link to it so that Sawhorse can say, oh, hey, I know that this page exists. I should do something with it. So up at the very top, I'm going to say, href equals sample.hbs, visit the sample page. So I'm doing this in index.hbs, so when I refresh, it will show up right there. It looks ugly, but it's fine for now. When I click this, it will take me to, notice it's sample.html. That's because Sawhorse is taking this handlebars file with all these weird things in it, and it's turning it into an HTML page. So I click through, it took me to this HTML. We want to change this stuff to match our page. So what we're going to do is, mine has a title and it says sample page. So all I need to do to make this say sample page is up at the top of index.hbs, remember we have our Frontmatter, all of our variables here. And I'm going to change this to say sample page. I'm going to save, and I'm going to refresh. And there you go. Looks great. I can also change all of these other things if need be. I don't think I had a subhead. Hopefully you will have a subhead. Oh, here is some stuff. Great. Save. There we go. That updates there. And then I'll throw something up there. So the kicker is this is a video walkthrough. So because I only edited this on sample.hbs, this Frontmatter at the top, it only edits the sample.html page. If I go back to our default page, it still looks like it used to. So by editing this code up here, it's only going to be changing the page that we are changing this on. If we wanted to add more stuff to the top of every page, the place that all of this is used is inside of HTML base headline.hbs. This is where, so we say, hey, please use the default template. And then if you look at the default template, it says, hey, go use the headline handlebars template inside of base. And so then it says, put the kicker there, put the headline here, put the subhead here. There's an author URL, throw it out. Otherwise, just put the name and then throw the published date down there. So if you wanted to add more variables here, I could say p sample variable here. And in order to make it show up, I could just add sample variable, blah, 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 save, refresh, and now blah, blah, blah shows up at the bottom. And because I'm editing this handlebars template here, headline.hbs, this is included on every single page. So if I refresh here, oh, no, that's the one on my desktop. If I go back to the index page and I refresh, oh, so it's pulling from sample variable. Sample variable is not set on this one. So if I set sample variable for index.handlebars and I refresh, it will then show up there. So anything that you just want to edit here on your page, instead of editing on every single page or editing elsewhere in your code, you can just add a variable to it. So I'm going to delete that sample variable, delete that sample variable, delete that sample variable, and then head back to our sample page. Okay, so this is what we want to have show up. So sample page, here's some stuff by my name, published. It's pretty close right now. Next up, we need to get all of these blah, blah, blahs, this image, and all the rest of this here. So I'm actually going to open this file up. It's on my desktop, the sample.html, just so we can look at it. I'm actually going to open up in a new VS Code window so we don't get confused and think it's part of the project. Okay, so this is a pretty complicated file. It has a head tag with a bunch of JS stuff here. It has a bunch of custom styles. It has, the headline, these blah, blah, blahs. It has this huge ai2html section, all of this. So what we're going to do is cut and paste one part at a time, and we're only going to cut and paste the stuff that we need. So, for example, I think that this style is pretty close to the style that we're looking for, so I'm not going to try to change any of this style. If we did want to take all of this CSS and move it into our project, what we would need to do is we would need to go into src styles style.css. So we could add this here. Additionally, we could create a new CSS file that is called, let's say, what's this? Sample styles or something else like that. And then we could go back to our template. And then in the same way that we include style.css, we could also include sample.css or other new CSS files. But we don't need to do that. All we want to do is we're going to start taking the content of this page bit by bit. So the first content that shows up on the page is this header section. Now our header section basically looks the same, so I'm just going to skip over that. Next up, we have all of these blah, blah, blahs. This stuff we actually want on the page. So I'm going to copy from my HTML file, and then I'm going to paste into here. So as we've talked about before, we could put this into a partial, or we could just paste all the code here. In this case, it's just going to be easy to paste the code because it's nothing really special. So refresh, we get a lot of blah, blah, blahs. So these blah, blah, blahs are remarkably big. Why are these blah, blah, blahs remarkably big? I actually don't know why. Take out margins, does it go away? Is that just the size of the font here? Yeah, all right, sounds good. So all of these blah, blah, blahs and are what we're looking for. This code down here, we don't want anymore. We do not need this image. We do not need all of this text here. In order to get rid of it, it's all coming from this partial, so we're just going to delete. Save, refresh, and now it's gone. Beautiful. We're going to come back to this right here. We'll come back to that one. And also the rest of them. So what we want to do now that we have added this text right here is we need to add the image. So next up, we have this fancy AI to HTML piece that is responsive, that changes as it gets bigger and smaller. Yeah, so there are different mobile sizes for that one. What we need to do is inside of our Sawhorse project, there is a folder that is called Illustrator. What I'm going to want you to do is I want you to take your AI to HTML file and then copy it, or not your AI to HTML file, your Illustrator file. Take your Illustrator file and copy it to Illustrator. It's not because this is a magic folder that does magic things. It's just because it's good to keep it with the rest of your project. So if you need to update your Illustrator later or update your website, you can keep it in the same place and you won't lose it like so many people have for their Illustrator stuff. So I have a demo already in the Illustrator file, Illustrator folder. I'm going to make a copy of it and I'm going to call this is a line chart. So I don't actually have this Illustrator file. I'm just going to use this one, and I'm going to call it linechart.ai. So I'll let AI open. So what we need to do is we need to take this code here, the code that is for this image, and we're going to end up putting it in a partial. So in the same way that right here, we say, hey, include this exported AI to HTML, the same thing we looked at already. We're going to do the exact same thing, but we're going to start from scratch. Okay, so this is the AI to HTML template that is sitting in the Illustrator folder. It has 3 different sizes, and it's what I used in order to make this responsive piece right here. So what we need to do is I'm just going to change the background color of this so that it ends up looking like something different. Not a big deal. So now it's nice and red. So what we want to do is run the AI to HTML script. But the important thing here is if we look at settings, so when you open this template or when you run AI to HTML, it opens up a setting block here. And the important settings, there are 2 major settings we're going to be paying attention to. The first one is HTML output extension. By default, AI to HTML creates a .html file. What we want it to make instead is a .hbs file, a handlebars file. So this doesn't actually matter. You can always just rename your HTML file to HBS, but I'm lazy. I don't want to have to rename it. So by making it HBS here, I don't have to worry about it later. Next up is the image output path. And this just means take all of the images that you make and put them in a folder that is called images. A lot of people have nothing for their image output path, so their images end up in the same folder as their HTML files, and that will not work with Sawhorse. So in order to use this, you must make it say image output path images. So we're now going to do file, scripts, other script, and we are just going to run. And we're just going to run AI to HTML.js. Runs, and it says, nice work, everything was perfect. if you get an error about fonts, there is a special file inside of this Illustrator folder called ai2html config.json. I have a tutorial about how to fix font issues with ai2html, and you can find that as a link below this video. So if you end up with font issues, click that link, read it, fix up this file, and your life will be perfect. So when we ran ai2html, what it did was it put a file called linechart.hbs inside of ai2html output, and then it also made a series of files here. This weird artboard 4, I think I might have accidentally produced another artboard, laptop, medium, and mobile. So these are the images that we are interested in, these ones right here. And this is the handlebars template that we are interested in here. If we look at it in VS Code, so we can scroll up and I can go Illustrator, ai2html output, linechart.hbs. This is a terrible, terrible thing. If you've had to paste this into HTML templates, you have been very, very unhappy in your life. And I feel like that's reasonable because it's, got a lot of tags. You're never quite sure if you're actually putting it in the right place. So what we're going to do is we are going to take this file, this linechart.hbs, and we are going to move it into our partials folder. So inside of src HTML story, in the same place that we have basic and chart and Illustrator demo, we need to move our handlebars template. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to do it in VS Code because I'm pretty sure I can just drag it on over here. So do you want to move it? And I say yes. Please move it. So now we have a new partial and it's called linechart.hbs. Let's say we try to use this right now. So we're going to open up our sample page and we're going to say, hey, we made a new partial and it's called linechart. Please use it. Save, refresh, and it's going to yell at us. And it's going to say, I do not know what this image is. You are trying to find video walkthrough src images linechart medium.png, no such file or directory. But then you look and you say, no, I do have linechart.medium, linechart.mobile, linechart.laptop. I have all of these files here. This is not where these files need to be. So in the same way that we move that handlebars file, we also need to move all of the images that were created. So instead of being in ai2html output images, or technically Illustrator ai2html output images, we are going to take all the images that it exported and we are going to move them into src images. Paste, refresh. It's going to yell at us. It says, I still don't know what's going on, and I'm just going to restart my server because I feel like that solves all problems. And there we go. So we have successfully put, where'd it go when it got small? Oh no, this was a bad export. Oh, there we go. There's the mobile version. So it ended up being that extra artboard that I put in there really screwed everything up. So just pretend that everything worked great because I know it will work great for you as long as you don't accidentally create a fourth large artboard. So I make it a little bit smaller. There we go, laptop version, mobile version, laptop version, full-size version. Ignore the fact that there's a second full-size version down there. If we did want to edit this to make this one go away, we could actually edit linechart.hbs. This is our artboard 4. I'm just going to delete it here. Save it, refresh, and there you go. It's disappeared. That will not happen to you. As I said, it won't happen to you because you will have not accidentally duplicated your artboard. You're perfect and amazing. I know that you'll be fine. Okay, so we added some text. We added an ai2html image here. We're pretending that this is this image here. We have some more blah, blah, blahs. And I say, okay, sounds great. We're going to copy those extra blah, blah, blahs from our sample.html, from our original file where we first made this project. And underneath where I say include line chart, which is this chart right here, I'm just going to paste that in there. Now, the final thing that we're going to have to do is I'm going to delete the copy at the bottom. I'm going to leave one thing. I'm going to leave this D3 chart right here. So what we are going to want to do is we are going to want to take this chart right here and convert it into D3. So I am not going to do that right now, but I will show you the steps that you need to take in order to do it. So right now we have a partial called chart sitting right here, and it's inside of story. So it's story chart. So I look at src, HTML, story chart, it's right here. All I really need to do to start is I'm gonna make a new partial. Let's say make a new partial. I don't want to call this chart because something is already named chart. We're gonna call this religion target because religion is the biggest target here. So I'm going to say, hey, I want to include a partial that's called religion underscore target. When I refresh, it will say, oh, I can't find it. I cannot find the partial story religion target. That's because we didn't make it. So in order to use this partial, we need to create this partial. So src, HTML, story, because it says story / religion target. So inside of story, I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to call it religion target.hbs. Let's write hello. This was successful. Save, refresh. Still doesn't work. Oh, let's restart the server because it never likes it when we add new files. Give it a moment for D3 to build, it packages, it builds, and now everything's good. So it says, hello, this was successful, and the same way this says, hello, this was successful. We don't want just some text though, we actually want it to put in a chart. So I'm just gonna copy chart.hbs, I'm gonna move it over here, and then we're gonna change this to be what we want it to be. So every time you make a D3 visualization, you need a div for it to go in, and that div needs to have an ID. So I'm going to give this a different ID. I'm going to call it religion target, because why not? And then I'm going to say, oh, I don't want you to use scripts chart01.js, because that's already doing the first chart. I'm going to make a new file called, let's say religion target.js. Notice that I'm doing a very bad thing where sometimes I'm using underscores between this and sometimes I'm using hyphens. But that just means something you have to pay attention to. So I'm saying, okay, here's a religion target chart. And then I'll get rid of that line there. And I'm going to refresh, and it's going to give me a terrible, terrible error. I'm going to restart. Because the first thing that you do every time you get an error is you restart, and it's going to yell and it's going to say, hey, I cannot find src scripts religion target.js. So you're going to get these kind of errors a lot. When you get an error that says file not found, the first thing you're going to do is restart your server. The second thing you're going to do is actually think about it. So why is it talking about religion target.js? And it's because inside of my new partial, I said use or include a script called religion target.js. I need to make this file now. So if I go into src scripts, where there's currently chart01.js, I'm going to create a new file called religion target.js. And here is where I would write all of my D3 code. So from import star as D3 from D3. D3 select, what's this called? Religion target. Let's append an SVG. Let's give it a width of 500 and a height of 500. And then I'm just going to put a rectangle in there just so you can see that it works. Okay, so let's keep our fingers crossed. I'm saving this, refreshing over here. I get another error. It says, oh, I don't know where this file is. And I'm like, okay, it's fine. I'll just restart and I hope it will work this time. It builds, it builds, it builds, packages, refresh, and there we go. So this has successfully worked. I now have a religion chart. It is the worst chart ever. Just to review, what I had to do was I had to say, okay, this is my page, src sample.hbs. This is the new page that I created. I edited this code up here, this Frontmatter, so that it would update the content on the top of the page. The reason why this works is because it's using a template. It's using a layout called default, which you can find in layouts default. And that layout is using all of this stuff inside of base, including headline.handlebars. So headline.handlebars takes the kicker, the headline, the subhead, all those things. It takes them from this code up top, this Frontmatter here. So next up, we have all of these blah, blah, blahs. All of these blah, blah, blahs are a result of me just typing code here. The way the original, the index file here did it, was it put them into a partial, but we were like, screw it, we'll just put the code right there. Next up, we said, hey, we're going to make a new partial called line chart. If you look at line chart, if you remember line chart, it was our AI to HTML export. So all we did was export from AI to HTML, and then we made sure that we moved it into the partials directory. So story, line chart. This doesn't have to be called story, it can be called whatever you want. And then we just copied that file in there. We also made sure that we copied those images over. So all those images went into the images folder, and then life became great. We got a few errors about files not being found, but as soon as we restarted the server or made sure that we moved the files to the right folders, everything worked out okay. Then we got some more blah, blah, blahs here, and all of those blah, blah, blahs here go like that. So just more miscellaneous text. And then we wanted to add another graphic, but this graphic was a D3 graphic. So in order to add a D3 graphic, we made a partial. We called it religion target. So in the same place as all the other partials, we said, look in story religion target. So HTML story religion target. And then we said, here's an ID, and then here is the script that you need to include. In order to have this not break, we had to create a new file in src scripts religiontarget.js, and it is there that we did all of our D3 work. So you can probably just cut and paste most of your D3 code into here, things from homework assignments, stuff like that. The only thing to be careful about is make sure that you're putting all of your data inside the data folder, and then you should be pretty good. So I think that is most everything. You will want to add a partial for navigation that ends up on every single page probably. I'd recommend putting that or including that in your layout. So instead of just base headline, maybe on top of that also include base navbar. But beyond that, yeah, you'll just keep adding more and more of these files. If you want to keep all of your partials well organized, right now, we're really just putting everything inside of story. For different homework assignments though, I made like a story 07, a story 09, things like that, so you could keep the HTML for each category of homework separate. So instead of just story, there might be story and homework 07 and homework 08. So then instead of saying story basic, you would say, you know, homework 07 basic or homework 09 basic, something like that. What else have we got? What else have we got? If you want to organize your JavaScript a little bit better, so right now we have all of our JavaScript basically sitting in the scripts folder. If you wanted to organize them in folders in the same way that you organize the HTML, the HTML partials in like homework 07, homework 09. You can make new folders inside of scripts. Scripts, homework 07, scripts, homework 09. And the only thing you would need to change is instead of just saying scripts, religion target, you could say scripts, homework 07, religion target, scripts, homework 09, religion target, something like that. So I think that's pretty good. When you're ready to publish, you can shut your server down and then run npm run build. This will end up creating your actual web page that you will end up pushing up to GitHub. After you run npm run build, you push to GitHub and then you choose to publish the docs folder. I have a tutorial about that. It is right underneath the video as well. So I think that is it, and I hope that that was useful.